Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Byron K. Ward Presents Business Leadership with Action. We're a show that highlights Black entrepreneurs and corporate executives and organizational leaders that excel in what they do. And we always focus on people of color. We are so excited and we're grateful to have a pillar in the African American media here in the state of California and nationally to be with us today. And so I would like to welcome and to introduce to some and present to others Regina Brown Wilson, Executive Director of California Black Media. Hello.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really looking forward to hearing your story and sharing uh, sharing that story with our listeners today. So, if there's no introductory comments you would like to make or any shout outs.
Well, you know what? I always want to shout out all of the amazing Black media that I get to work and have the pleasure to work with, and ethnic media throughout the state that I get to work with. I think Byron, people like you are amazing. You are doing the work. You're going into your community. You're telling your stories, and you're holding people to account. You are doing the work that news agencies should be doing, and making sure that communities that often have been overlooked in the past, and by just historically, have been historically marginalized. I love it whenever I see people doing this for themselves, not prompted by anyone else, not being puppets for anyone else, but being able to say, you know what, I'm going to go figure it out and I'm going to go do this work. And so, I am extremely impressed with the people of Oxnard and the surrounding areas. I know that one of our publishers, our former publishers, who serves on California Black Media's board, Peggy Hunt, who had the Tri-County Star, or Tri-County newspaper, when she sold her publication, it left a void, because I understand what it feels like
Yes.
whenever um, a publication that was serving the community is no longer there. And it takes time. Even though I do know the new owner, I still understand that the community wanted something that they could call their own. And I totally understand that. I totally get that. And I totally, I totally support the people in your community who said, you know what, we're going to come together, and maybe we won't have a newspaper in the same way, but we'll start a radio station. And I think that I'm still learning that space, but have immense amount of respect for people who have said, I'm going to take back the narrative. I'm going to take control of ensuring that our community is informed about the things that they need to um, be informed about, to live, work, and play in the communities that they reside in. So I have the utmost respect for anybody who stands strong to do that.
Well, we appreciate you too, and we're so grateful for you in particular for the role you have played in being an advocate for not only 993 FM, but the what is it 23 black-owned media outlets across the state.
Yeah.
Do I have that number right?
You know what? I think that we're up to almost 30 at this point. There's some more
Outstanding.
people who have come online, and they're like, can you please put us on? Can we want to be on? So we're getting calls regularly about people wanting to be affiliated, wanting to, they want us to be their advocate. And I think that, we don't want to do anything that the publishers or media outlets themselves don't want have done. And the unique part is that my experience was, my parents owned a newspaper, and I grew up in the newspaper business. The Black Voice was a household name. I can say that honestly, whenever I was growing up, I thought, oh my gosh, I feel like it's too militant saying Black voice. And didn't realize until I got, I don't know, maybe in my early 20s, when I came back to work for my parents, and people came back to me and said, "Oh my goodness, if your dad had not done this, if your mom had not written this story, if these stories weren't told, there were outcomes where people would have lost their jobs and employment. There are people whose children who were probably murdered by the police, or had some type of wrongdoing, whether, I mean, the things that they've done still live on today, including their Footsteps to Freedom tour that my mom um, created. And she created it out of someone coming to her and telling her that a teacher was telling a child that that people who were enslaved, but she called it slaves, that they were really happy, and that this was the way of life, and that slavery was a good thing. And I had to tell you, my mom then created the Footsteps to Freedom, where she started taking educators across, by motor coach, the Footstep to Freedom Trail. And they would go from Kentucky all the way to Canada and educate the teachers so that they um, could see that this is not what you want to be telling kids. And my brother has taken that on and now takes, I think, 5 trips a year with, I don't know how many teachers, but I know several, maybe 50 or 60 teachers per trip. So a couple hundred people per year on the Footsteps of Freedom tour, to ensure that our educators who are educating our community and other communities are really informed. But this all stemmed from my parents and the work that they do. And I am the baby of the family, so I am honored to be able to take their legacy and have their legacy live on. I always tell them, I'm like, look, I never thought there was nothing that I ever really wanted. Um, in life. I mean, I think whenever, some people are like, I grew up, I wanted to be a doctor. I think that whenever I was able to see how my parents had touched so many different people in so many different real ways, that made me say, I want your legacy to live on. And I've been on this fight to ensure that the Black press and Black media has a voice, a seat at the table, and that they're independently controlled and owned, not swayed with everyone else, but that they can independently do what's right and what's best for their community versus having to cower down to a collective sometimes. So I think we come together collectively when we have to, but my goal is to ensure that you're able to independently think and not put pressure on you to think a certain way, because that's where that's where people are running this, the day of the week they're like, hey, this is the new fad. I don't believe in that. I believe in each and every publication being able to make their own decisions. And I believe all of them are very smart and educated to be able to do that. So I give room for that. And we work collectively to make sure that we preserve it.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. That's very good information for our listeners. And that's also a good segue into your childhood and the family legacy that you've grown up in. Tell us just briefly about Regina, the little girl, and how your experiences in the Brown family have shaped you as a woman and as a woman of color and the principal figure in a statewide organization.
So, I believe that as a little girl growing up, I was the baby. So I was the one who everybody looked at like I was spoiled. I was not the, you know, I definitely, I think that if people would have seen me as a child growing up, um, they may not be like, oh man, this is the Regina we know now from then. I think I probably underestimated a lot of folks in terms of the way I see things, the experiences that I've had. Um, but I will say, like growing up, I did not want to have anything to do with the newspaper business initially. I just thought, I didn't realize all of the perks and the benefits that I was getting, just being associated to Hardy and Cheryl Brown and being born into the family that I was born into. I took for granted, um, all of the things that they, the knowledge, the relationships. I often say to people, if you have parents, like I was born to parents that had good credit. So I didn't feel like, and what I mean by good credit, meaning good social credit, right? They had good names. And I often joke that I was like, why would I go try to start something else? I mean, I think if I would have had a passion to be an engineer or something like that, maybe. But my passion really started driving because I started looking at how hard my father had to work, how my mother had to work, and what they did to impact people's lives. And I think that was just, I didn't realize I was getting that daily lesson my entire life. I always felt like my parents are never around. They're always doing stuff for the community, which I feel like my kids probably feel like too, to some degree. And my mom would drag me to all the boring meetings and I would hate it and I would have an attitude. And I think that going through this journey, I've been able to appreciate all of those times. I truly believe that God doesn't do anything on accident. So I think that um the pathway that was lined out for me was enough for me to be able to do what I'm doing now and be in a situation where I could help, and it could help in a very genuine way, and I could ensure that, you know I can assure that, like, once again, that their legacy really lives on. So, I mean, I want to say, as a child, I think early on, I used to always say, I want to own a conglomerate. I didn't even know what it was at the time, but I just said that. Um, I'm not saying I'm doing that now, but I definitely have my hands in a lot of different things that are allowing for the opportunity, um, the opportunity for business. So I've
Right.
100% always been business minded. I've always, I think I've instilled that in my kids. I watch my kids do that now, telling me how they can make money to do whatever it is that they're trying to do. And I believe that it's the backbone. I mean, I think it's what gives you financial freedom and independence. And, if there's one thing that I wish I probably would have done too is learn accounting better, because I struggle with that now. And I now realize how it's the backbone to so many businesses, and I see how so many businesses don't have really good record keeping anyway, financial record keeping. So my hope is that, um, that I take those lessons that I've learned being a kid, and I'm parlaying those now into my adult life and into my
Well,
career.
well, as the baby girl in the family, tell us about your sibling.
So my siblings, I have, well, three older siblings. So all of them, or some of them, are in this business and some are not. Um, my oldest sister, she is retired now, and what is she doing now? She's retired. She's a green thumb. She is working on farming as a master farmer, and so I think those are roots that go back to my dad, who was born in Trenton, North Carolina, and um, born to he was a son of sharecroppers, right? So that was kind of in
Wow.
our blood, and she saw that.
Give her a shout out. What's her name?
Oh, yeah, Lynn Lee. Or I'm so sorry, I forgot she got remarried. Lynn Summers. Um, but yeah, she is knee deep in farming and sustainability and making sure that, people are ready for the next pandemic and that they can look at sustainability. They could grow their own food if they had to, and also preserve it. Because it's one thing to get to a place where you're, you know, I mean, you probably have heard this. You've probably read headlines and news stories about the food shortages that could be on their way and could come. And so
Absolutely.
she's looking at emergency preparedness and what people are going to need to do to be able to save, because my dad has always taught us, like, be prepared in business, be prepared to eat beans if you had to. So I often live in that. um I don't try to do, I mean, I like enjoying my life, but I don't have like a fully glamorous life, because a lot of what I do is being prepared to eat beans if I need to, and being able to stay true to my mission in the work. My next sister, she actually runs the family paper, the Black Voice. So she's running the Black Voice day to day, and she has her own accomplishments in her own right, and has um, started another publication called the IE Voice, as well as the Black Voice. So she has two publications that she's pretty much running, and in the Inland Empire region. And
And
she's
her
also doing,
name?
her name is Paulette, Dr. Paulette Brown Hine. She's a PhD in English, and she adjunct professor. I mean, she is she does so many amazing things. Um,
Great.
and then we have my brother, who is he is running the foundation, like Black Voice Foundation, and underneath the Black Voice Foundation is where the Footsteps to Freedom tour is. And my oldest sister Paulette, or older sister Paulette, she also helps with the Footsteps to Freedom, but Footsteps to Freedom is his baby, and he took my mom's work and has been able to amplify it, and turn it into this amazing jewel that I believe school districts and other people who attend for personal development are able to get this education that they just hadn't gotten before. And I believe that when you have information, new information, or new views on things, I think it does really change lives, and how how teachers go into classrooms teaching kids. And so he's doing really amazing, amazing work.
That's great.
And
And
his name
his
is
name?
Hardy. His name is Hardy Brown, and he is a junior. He's second.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Let me make sure I say it right.
Yes. So there's great stock in your family, obviously, and so we uh, we see where you came from, and you and your siblings are doing well and contributing at high levels in your respective areas. So before we move on from your childhood, uh, tell us about your high school years and your college years. Any activities or noteworthy memories you have of high school and or college?
Well, in high school, I will say that, I got the bug, ended up being graduated, and I was senior class president. So I think that was my first foray into the political world. I was not the kid who was like, oh, yeah, I want to be this or that. Once again, I was kind of spoiled because I was the baby. um, but always had like just always still had a business mind, and who knew that I would run, be elected. um I think it was I was talking to friends, and I said, man, wouldn't that be cool if I was senior class president? And at our school we had mayors, so senior class president really wasn't the top job. We also had a mayor, and so that was kind of like people wanted to be the mayor. But the senior class president got to give the senior class um address. So I was actually like happy because I got to give the senior class address. And my father for years had been on the school board, all while I was in school. Pretty much, he had been elected to the school, San Bernardino Unified School District, and we were able to give. He was able to the year I got out of school is the year he retired, and we were both able to address the class of 1995, where I
That
was senior class president and he was elected to the school board. So he signed my diploma. And so that was really cool,
that's very cool.
In college, I went to an HBCU. Once again, didn't know
All
what I
right.
wanted to do, was Wilberforce University. My brother had gone to Wilberforce. I think I was following in his footsteps because he was more of a marketing business major, and he is a business mind as well, but a marketer. Like that's where his place was. And I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I was saying, oh, I want to be in business, international business marketing. I had no clue really what I was doing. I think we were just, I was going to school because that's what I was told that you had to do. There was like not, it wasn't really like a choice. There was no choice of go get a job after you get out of school. It was like you're going to school. So I had to, and so I had to take a pick, and I had to find some place. And I wanted to be in at Clark Atlanta. I didn't get into Clark Atlanta, and so I ended up at Wilberforce. But it was such a good experience for me being at a place where it was a culture shock, because coming from California and then going to someplace that's all Black, that was a culture shock, but very much so had a level of understanding um, our community, and understanding the diversity within Blackness, right? Like that is where I really strongly figured out the diversity in Blackness, which people don't think it. People think that I think Black people are all just a monolith, but we're just not. Um, and so that was it was a good experience for me. Finished up, and I'll never forget, we used to ride this bus called Wilbur. If people know in Ohio or been in that area, it was a bus that would take you to town. It was a green bus, and that's how you would get to town and get stuff. And Wilbur, I remember being on the bus, and I would ask folks, okay, who would you rather be, Michael Jordan or the person paying Michael Jordan? And so many people were like, I would rather be Michael Jordan. I never wanted that. I was like, I'd rather be the person paying Michael Jordan. Because I said, if I'm calling those kind of shots, then just imagine how much money and control and stuff that I have. So I think I had something in me all along that wanted to be on the other side. And even whenever I switched majors from journalism to communications and focused on journalism, I think it's because it was like, hey, this was my life. This was, you know, this is. This was a place for me to kind of figure out things. And once I got into the journalism program, or our school was so small, so I don't want to call it, it was a journalism program, but that's what it was. Um, that showed me a whole new level of balancing. I believe I've been balancing stories forever in terms of balancing information for our community and making sure that people have the most relevant information, but that you're fair and accurate in how you report it. Um, I had times where I remember I had a teacher who was like, "Hey, Regina, everything I did at first used to be I want to be in front of the camera," and I'll never forget being so cocky about being in front of the camera that I didn't even realize like the importance and the power behind the camera at the time. And I think those times helped me really understand how important it was to be able to do the work that was behind the scenes. It wasn't necessarily the stuff that was in front of the scenes. It was the stuff that was behind the scenes that was so important. So, um, I that's what I think I've learned from that time, and I am just, super excited that I had the opportunity to do so much of that kind of work.
Well, obviously, you parlayed that experience. Were you a good student?
You know what? I became a better student once I found my place. So, I found my place whenever I got into the journalism program. And I'll never forget, I got an F in my first journalism 101 class. My
Oh,
teacher was like, just because your parents own a newspaper doesn't mean you're going to get out of here. And I'll never forget Mr. Barnes. We would go neck and neck. And I failed the class. He gave me an F and I had to retake it because I wasn't taking it serious. And after that point, I mean, I was a better student in college than I was in high school for sure.
outstanding. Well, that's the learning experience. At least you didn't do the 42 shuffle.
Oh, yeah. No, no,
Yep,
no.
that's an inside joke for folks from Ohio and the Central State and Wilberforce connection. Um, want to remind everyone that you're listening to Byron K. Ward presents Business Leadership with Action. And we're here today with our special guest, Regina Brown Wilson, who is the Executive Director of California Black Media. So you graduate with that communication degree from Wilberforce University. And what's next in your career?
At that time, my senior year, I ended up having a child. And most people thought, okay, this is crazy. But that actually just really made my life kind of like go really fast. And today I have a beautiful 24-year-old daughter, Kennedy, who is just amazing. Um, and I think at that time, I had to put a lot of my stuff on the back burner. So I went to work immediately because I needed health care. I couldn't actually take a job in the news industry because I was like, there's just no way I can't go to sit in city council meetings. At the time, you couldn't do this stuff online. You had to go. I was like, what am I going to do? And so I kept trying to find a pathway of what am I going to do? I'm a single mother and I have to take care of this child. And, I took a job in Kentucky and stayed there for a while, Fidelity Investments, got a lot of great experience, learned, a lot of really smart people that I got to meet and work with. But I just knew it wasn't for me for long term. And my brother convinced me to move back to California. And I said, oh my gosh, I cannot believe this was a culture shock when this is right before 9/11 happened. And right after 9/11, right when I got back, I've maybe been back maybe 4 months and the world had shut down because of 9/11.
Right.
And at that point, I was like, "Oh my gosh, what am I gonna do?" My father had taken ill. He had started like kind of going on some kind of decline with his health, and my sister, my oldest, my not my oldest, but my sister who runs the newspaper now said, "I need you to come work for us. I don't have anybody else I could trust, and I need you to come work." And I was like, "Okay." And so I was like, "The pay is too low. I can't do this." But what I recognized was that I didn't have to have everything fancy. I was able to learn the business from top to bottom, do every job, and had a newfound respect for being a business owner, trying to figure out how you make it work. And I also balanced that with the fact that I was able to be there for my child. And so that was probably the most important thing to me because when I was working corporate, it was like, we don't care if you can't find a babysitter. You need to be here.
Yes.
This is your time. This is your time. And I didn't like that because it wasn't paying me enough to make me not have mom guilt. And I just was like, I don't like this. And so after that, it was very interesting for me to just make sure that I was like in a good position. I, worked for the family business. And I did that all the way until I got an appointment with Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was running for reelection at the time and moved to Sacramento. And that's what started me down the path that I'm in now of really being able to marry business, public policy, advocacy for the sector together to be able to create really measurable results. And hopefully sustainable results because that's what we're going for. So I thought that that was really um, a good thing. But yeah, so that journey was a very rocky journey. I did copier sales. I worked at enterprise rental car. I mean, I went from all of those things that I think you have to do. I think all of those experiences you really do need to do, and I encourage everybody if they can work at some of these companies. I would work there to see what they have to make it work. And if you have a budding idea that you want to go out after, then I would do that so that you can start looking at systems and processes so that you can build and scale the business that's meant to last.
Yeah, that's great. So, was California Black Media next? How did that come
So
about?
yeah, so I worked for I don't know 4 years underneath Schwarzenegger and a little bit of Brown's administration, and what I noticed was that I was like, wait a second, we I was stuck in education. I really did not know what I was doing. I was like, I can't believe I'm in public policy. I don't know education policy. And at the time, I was like, wasn't even an avid newspaper reader, and I
That
then was in the
that would
comms
have been a good
position.
fit for your brother, huh?
Well, I don't even know if it would have been a good fit for him, but maybe. But what I ended up doing is, which is amazing, I was in communications for the Secretary of Education. That was where my first job was in the administration. And I had to do news clips. I learned and media was very different then because you actually had education writers. You had health writers. You had all these different segments underneath a newspaper. That is literally probably the demise of not having that all in one place right now is horrible, because what a newspaper does, if you read it every day, it's just recycled information, but it's giving you historic information that you can use on subject and topics. So I learned everything that I know about public policy and education and the fights and all of these other things based off of reading the newspaper. It was literally by reading the newspaper every day. That's
Yes.
how I learned about that's how I learned. And so now I take that, and people think I'm smarter than what I am, and I'm like, "No, I just read." But you need journalists, you need people who are writing, you need a whole team to be able to do that work so that the people in a community could take the time, read bits of information, because it's not long. It's not books of articles. It's 600 to 700 words, right? It's that bite-sized information that allows you to be educated enough to make decisions about things, how they impact your community. And you need it bite-sized because things are happening all the time. And that's what a newspaper does. And so once I really started understanding that, and I really looked at the state at the time of where African Americans were, nobody was having conversations. You had a whole state board of education. You had black members there, but you had people who were not even talking about, they didn't know, I think, how to say, how do you take this information or policy that you're being asked, and how do you make sure that the most marginalized people are being heard, or impact, are going to be impacted in a positive way. And so what I did is I sat there. I used to tell people, I had a girlfriend of mine who I used to work with. The meetings would be 2 days, and they could go from 8 a.m. I mean, I have to be at work at 7 or 8 a.m., and we could go until 11 o'clock at night, depending on how many agenda items, because they only met like every 2 months, or that's when the State Board of Education met. And I promise you, I wanted to take a pencil and just poke my eyes out because I didn't understand why I was doing what I was doing. But the interesting part was that I looked at government and I was like, this is what government is. Government is a process. Everybody, it's a perfect imperfect process. Um, Once you understand it, there's protections for you and me, and all the listeners. There's protections in place. We just have to follow and understand the process. And once I understood that, I stopped fighting the process and said, this is how you become a part of the process, and this is how you make change happen. And so that led me, once I left the administration, to look at the Black media and say, this is what's missing. We're not telling the community what the heck is going on at these meetings. Yes, it's
Yeah.
boring. All of those things are boring. You have to sit through it. And you sit through it and you sift through information, and then understanding your audience, you then are able to provide the audience with the relevant information that they need to take action. So I never believe in telling them what to do, but I also know that there's not a black person in this state, or probably in this country, that you would talk to who would say that they don't believe that black kids should have a proper education. If that's the case, then we need to be at every education meeting. We need to be at every budget meeting. Locally, we need to know, you need to understand what's happening statewide to then be able to understand what's happening in your local community, right? It's convoluted in a way, but it's not, to understand, and then to be able to make the best decisions that are based on the things that you care about or what your community cares about. So if they say we want to fund special reading tutoring labs, and you know that African Americans, you look at the data and the data tells you that African Americans are underperforming what the average should be, then that community should be able to stand up and say, you know what, no, this is where we want to direct money. We want money to go into after school reading programs. This is what news is able to do. It's able to
Right.
look at this information, help people understand it. And then I think that community-based organizations, our faith-based communities, can help us then understand, oh man, this is what we should be fighting for. But
Yeah.
oftentimes we don't know what to be fighting for because we're not doing that level of work. And I hope to get us to a place where we're doing that level of work regularly.
Absolutely. And just sharing that story, it shows your passion for what you do. Um, from a perspective of the business of California Black media, Take us inside the business aspect. It
Well,
were Did you found California Black Media?
so I did not find I was not the founder of California Black Media. Once again, this is the brilliant work of of my father, Hardy Brown, and a couple of publishers said we're going to fight for our fair share. And it started off as association. Associations have their own level of issues. It started off doing all these things. So when I got California Black Media, which as oddly enough, it was basically defunct. And I've been able to revive it based off of the experience I had. My dad was like, "You've been in Sacramento, Regina, and therefore you should go ahead and take on California Black Media." And I was like, "What?" And my mission has been to make sure that my father has been able to see the legacy that he laid down. Once he in 2001, I want to say he was diagnosed with ALS, which is Lou Gehrig's disease. And it's been slow moving in form, but it's been a definite toll on our entire family, on my mother
Sure.
who's caretaking for him, and it's been a lot to take on. And but it's been slow moving, and so we're really happy that we've had him as long as we've had, because when you get that diagnosis, they basically say you have between 3 and 5 years to live, and you just will die.
Right.
Um,
Well,
he's been living with it for over 20 years, which is amazing. And he's still been able to guide me and the work that we're doing to make sure that we're doing what the mission, that we're staying true to the mission of getting your fair share and staying true to advocating to ensure that our sector is not overlooked. And so I will say, from a business perspective, we are always kind of, as a nonprofit business, um, it is, nonprofits are businesses, but are different than for-profit businesses. And our push is very mission driven to ensure that the publications are able to survive. And so I think we've been right now in a phase of preservation and making sure that our Black owned media outlets are preserved, and that they're able to thrive. I believe we'll be going into some strategic planning soon to kind of look at what the next phase is going to look like. Everything we've been doing, though, is just to stop the bleeding of all the changes. Because I think whenever I started in 2010, I mean, we didn't, Facebook and all of this digital stuff was not even there. You couldn't go and get, you did. I believe in 2010, my boss at the time, and I was still working on the census, was forcing me to get a Facebook page. And I was like, I don't want Facebook. Um, I think he had MySpace and that kind of stuff, but it wasn't what it was today, like it is today. And
right.
so, um, maneuvering through that, we're maneuvering through to make sure that the publications have strong business models. Last year we were able to raise about $500,000 to help the media make some needed upgrades and changes. And so we're going to be doing a report out on what that has looked like. We regranted um, we regranted so much dollars to the media, and then we helped some who were ready for transformation in terms of updating their websites and working on strategies to ensure that there is long lasting sustainability dollars, meaning advertising dollars that will come to the table. We've been a part of many of these conversations at a statewide level to ensure that, you know, the media is able to stay independent, that the Black media is able to stay strong. And so far, I think that we've been winning in that regard, in terms of, we're not where we want to be, but we are definitely in a trajectory where I believe many publications have told me that, Regina, without you advocating and making sure we're included, without you advocating and doing some of the stuff you do, we wouldn't, we would not have probably survived some of the things that, that the industry has thrown at so many people who have just gone under. I've seen it. There was a Highland newspaper that just went out of business. I mean, I see that all the time, but I think that it's also because the business model and mission driven business model may not have worked for them. It may not work if you're not willing to say, hey, I have to work in partnerships. I have to do the certain things to survive. Um, some people have said, look, I'm just going to close out my paper because I don't want to do the work that it would take to do something different to make it survive. So I think there's a lot of different things, but I feel like I've seen growth. And, it's sad to say, but I will say most of the publications during um, the census did really well. We advocated, and there was more than $3 million that was injected just into Black media alone. And we advocated to get more than 50 million in media. Um, let's see, what else did we do? That was in the census. This During COVID, I mean, once again, there was another round of dollars that got infused. And who did they need to reach? They needed to reach the people you collectively reach. And you reach them more cost effectively than other people because, you know, I look at social media and the rest of that stuff as direct mail. So you can do direct mail. It's cheap to do direct mail in some ways. Sometimes it's not, but it's cheaper to do direct mail. But people want people they can trust. They want to know that there's an issue that's going on that I could call Byron, Ward, and say, wait, Byron, tell me the skinny. What should I really be looking at? Is this really okay? Have we really thought this through? Because so many times things are not looked at with the lens that the many ideas and issues that are complicated within the Black community, they don't know how to do that. And I tell people oftentimes, I don't want to say you have to be Black to know, but there's something in my gut that allows me to know. So I know it's not scientific, but it's doing the work that I do. It's not baking, it's more cooking. So it's not as precise as baking. You have to
Okay,
know when to throw in a little salt. You have to know when to throw in a little pepper. You have to do this stuff to taste sometimes. And I
great
think a lot
analogy.
of people don't understand that.
Yeah. Now, is California Black Media a 501c3?
Yes.
Okay, so uh, public benefit corporation.
Yes.
Okay, so how is it uh, running a business? What
Well,
have
I
you
mean,
learned? What are some of the things you can share regarding the business aspects with our listeners?
I will say that running a for-profit nonprofit business obviously are very different, but they're both businesses, right? They're just tax status, which is what's the difference. Um, and what I will say about that is I would be I will say the thing that I'm learning right now is make sure that you know accounting and have a good grasp of a good bookkeeper, and make sure that you have a good grasp of um what your mission is and that you don't stray from your mission.
Yeah,
Um, all of the stuff that we do works to push back to benefit the organizations and the media that we advocate for, the sector and the industry and what your interests are. So we really, as a nonprofit, are education based, program based. We do very little in terms of, I mean, we do advocacy, but we do it within the guise of what we can legally. Um, and we've helped to support to make sure people don't leave you out. Like, I mean, I think that's probably one of the biggest things that we can do. So sometimes you'll see stuff come through from California Black media, from education campaigns that we may be working on, but you'll also see things that come not from California Black media. And that's because we were able to help make sure that you were visible enough with the people who needed to be visible. We have a program. One of our programs is that, this well, is that we send out statewide news. So we basically, when people look at us, they look at us like a Black AP, so to speak, where we hire journalists, we have an editor, and it's difficult to sift through all of this information. So what we do is, as a public benefit, we are following issues that we know would be pertinent and important at a statewide level. And then we provide that news to the publications, but it's done through a lens that you're able to collaborate. You can call me and say, Regina, are you guys looking at this issue? Can you make sure this happens? Can you ask this question? Because that may take us down a different angle. And so that's one of our signature things that we do, is that we're providing news at a statewide level to the publications, so that when you print this, you have original content. First of all, you're not getting this content from anybody else. It is in collaboration with the organization you guys want to be affiliated with. And now you guys have this news that sets you apart from everyone else, because it's not, we don't, like I like to tell people, we don't make people read between the lines, right? You're not reading between the lines. You get to um, have access to this information without reading between the lines.
What is the size of the organization?
You mean the
California Black Media.
you mean just like our financial size?
You
Or
could talk about that, but mainly I was talking about the number of employees and how you're structured.
yeah, I mean, right now, like being a nonprofit like anybody else, right now, we don't have any employees, so I'm not even an employee of the organization. We have a numerous amount of volunteers. We have numerous amount of freelance writers who are writing for us, writing for other publications. Um, And so we've been able to operate where we are still in a place of looking for some of those reoccurring funding sources so that we can grow. But I will say that last year, I won't have those numbers until probably August, but last year we grew significantly in terms of how much we were able to bring through grants and through donations, and to fund some of the work. And so we are, most folks are like, Regina, I'm going to keep my job, but I still believe in this commitment of what you're doing. So I want to do this on the side. So we have been completely working on faith. Um, Not the way you would want to run a for-profit business at all. I don't think. I think you can do it as a nonprofit because there's a mission to it that people are like, wait a second, I believe in this. And you can have mission driven for-profit companies, but I think people want sustainability. I think whenever you get to the for-profit world.
Well, this is kind of unique in the people I usually speak with, uh, because you are running. Can you share your budget? Do you have an
Yeah,
annual budget?
I will tell you, we're looking at what that is, and I know we're in between CPAs right now. And so we have a CPA who's coming in to get us so that we could be audit ready, because we want to be able to be, as obviously, but we're a nonprofit, so we have to be transparent, but I want to make sure that we're doing everything um to the to the letter of the law. So we have our CPA, and I believe we were maybe about 3.6 million that we were able to bring in last year. So, and I could be off on those numbers, but we're
That's
working
great.
with them now to look at it. But that grew because of all of the work. And I want to say more than half of it went back out to diverse businesses. So we make sure we were working with um Black journalists. I mean, we work with anybody. Obviously, we do not discriminate in any kind of way, but we have created a place so that the people who weren't able to find work, right? We pick them up and dust them off. We're giving
Right.
them opportunities. When the publications need whatever we need, we're picking them up. When they're overlooked, we're working with them to get our messages out. We're working with them and so our contracting process makes sure that this goes back to small businesses that are serving their communities. And typically, I mean, 9 times out of 10, a lot of them are African American businesses. I mean, we work with a lot of different people, but um, there's a definite diversity that you see going on in
Sure.
very positive way.
Our station here in 99.3 is a beneficiary of the efforts of yourself and California Black Media. Do you have, in addition to the passion and your motivation for doing what you do. Do have you defined a business strategy, or what helps you to be the type of leader you are? What do you have guiding principles that
Yeah. I mean, my parents have just instilled in me the place of always being honest. Um, I look at our mission, I look at someone like Ida B. Wells, and I think of, the people must know before they can act. There's no educator like the press. I believe in sticking to the principles of ensuring that my elders are taken care of and that legacy publications are not overlooked because people think the new flashy thing is digital. Um, I'm I truly am being very I listen a lot. I know I talk a lot, but I listen a lot to the people in community and the people who've been doing the work. I
yeah,
look for the people who've been doing the work. And those are who I end up gravitating towards because I recognize that those are the people who are going to be around whenever the fads leave.
yeah,
Those are going to be the
yeah.
people that are around. And I stick with making sure that I am empowering them as much as I possibly can.
But that's great. Thanks for sharing that. We're ending the we're moving toward the end of our hour here. So, what can you share with us of your vision of the future?
My
What's the
vision
next step for Regina and the Black media in California?
My vision is to find the sustainable funding necessary so that you can thrive. That is my sole mission. And I've said that once I do that, I want to groom the next person that has great ideas to be put in place so that we're never in this situation again and come up with a system so that we continue to groom so we don't continue to lose footing. Because I've had to come in and, you're starting from scratch. I had the basis there, but you're starting from scratch.
Yes.
I think I've been able to gain the respect from mostly every Black media outlet in this state because I don't play games. I'm honest with them and I'm fair. And I watch that from my father's behavior and I just basically emulate that.
Well, you're obviously a very strong advocate. I have nicknames for you. You're a bulldog. You just are passionate. I think is the best way to describe it.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I am. And I've listened to people like Warren Buffett say, marry the right person and do something you're passionate about. And you'll never work a day in your life. And I really don't feel like I work. I feel like this is something I'm passionate about, but it's also because of people like you and so many others that I want you guys to be able to focus on that part while I know that there's other forces that are working against you. And I'm saying because I've been able to see that from a statewide level and the work that I've done in government, I don't want you guys to have to go through that. So I'll take on that fight while you guys are doing the good work.
Yeah, you're almost in role somewhat of a lobbyist and a they're
Well, not
fighting
a lobbyist. Because a lobbyist, you have to be trained and you have to be licensed. I'm not licensed, but you got to kind of declare that. But,
figuratively.
but I'm an advocate.
You
I'm a
you are.
fearless advocate that knows the lane that I need to be in to make sure that your voices are heard. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything other than the fact that you guys need your due justice, right? That you guys need your due and you need to be at the table. That's what I do. And I think that um I'm able to convince people in all sectors of that because of the work that we're doing and because of the grooming that we're doing to continue to make sure that the publications stay relevant, they stay on topic, they stay on trend with, the technology and all of that, but also knowing that we can't leave our communities behind.
Right.
Like I said, it's great. Technology is great, but we also saw that it was the equalizer to actually create a divide within our community.
Yes.
Our community, technology is great till it doesn't work. And if you don't own your own platform, but there's still all these things, even from a digital perspective. If this is why you had publishers at one point owning their own printing press, because people would say, we're not going to let you print. So they went and out bought printing presses.
Yes.
Les Kimber in the Central Valley had to buy his own printing press. Amelia Ashley Ward has her own printing press. But then when you get to digital, that becomes a different monster. But people can block you out on an algorithm. So do you put all of your eggs in one basket where you could be blocked out by an algorithm? I don't know if that's the right way to go. So
So
go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, I'm trying to paraphrase your point there, and you may not have the exact answer, but it sounds like you're suggesting that the Black media need to stay diversified.
They must stay diversified so that they can keep control and ownership of their content and of their audience, their community, because that's the only way. I'm sure you've seen people say, I've been in Facebook jail because you said something that somebody doesn't like. I don't know that the press needs to be underneath that kind of scrutiny. That wouldn't be great. So yes, it's needed. We need digital, and we need to play in that space, but I think of them as a distribution tool. You guys have to create the good content. When you create the good content, like these conversations you're having with me and other leaders and entrepreneurs, that's when you have real power.
Yes, yes. So well spoken. Well, as we are entering the coming to the end of our session today, any final thoughts or any pearls you'd like to share with our listeners and our viewers?
What I'll tell anybody is make sure you understand accounting. Anybody who's going into business, and I don't care what form of business, understand accounting. It will help you in the long run, and it will keep you so that you can be viable. I will say
Yeah,
that.
yeah. You're the second person in a couple of recent interviews that I've had that have put a emphasis on accounting.
Yeah.
I had an interview with Dr. Cosette White, who that's her profession, and she trains other accountants who are independent business persons. And one of the things she shared with us that she didn't have a career picked out when she went to college. And one of her professors told her, if you're pretty good in accounting, if you get a degree in accounting, you'll never lack for a job. And she went into accounting, and now she has a multi-million-dollar business.
Yep.
So good.
I think it's very true. I think people try to make it more complicated in school. I don't think it's as complicated as people make it sound, but I would say stay up on it, because a lot of people just don't understand the record keeping portion. But once you do, you'll be able to make money, and you'll know where your money is, right? So you won't lose
Yes,
track. It-
absolutely.
You know,
Yeah,
it,
as a small business person myself, I concur with that.
yeah.
And Regina, this has been, man, this time's just shot by. We certainly appreciate you taking the time to share your wisdom with us today. We know it's on a short notice time wise, and that
Anything for you,
you
Byron.
you
Anything for you.
haven't had the rest that you would desire, but we really appreciate it.
No, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate being able to be here. And once again, I support, I support Black owned media, and I will do it whether I'm tired or not. I just got in from Florida last night. I will do it no matter what. Um, to make sure that I'm there, because I mean, you guys, the work that you do is so important. So
Yeah, as is the work you do. Thank you so much. You've
Yeah.
been listening to Byron K. Ward presents Business Leadership with Action. And our special guest today, Regina Brown Wilson, the Executive Director of California Black Media. We hope you've enjoyed this session. Remember, you can find us on live on 993 FM KJBU in Oxnard, California. Also streaming live on 99threfm.com. We're at byronkward.com. We're at Byron K. Ward on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And remember, thank you so much for following us, and we appreciate each of you.